Do you think these two cubes are exactly the same? Well, the answer is super simple. Nope. Let me show you why. If I select both of them, and while holding Alt, I add a bevel modifier to both, look closely. They look the same, but the bevel result is different on each one. Weird, right? The real reason is hidden in the side panel. If I click on one of these cubes and check the dimensions, you see both cubes are currently 2 meters by 2 meters. But here's the trick. The scale is different. This cube has a scale of 1, but the other one has a scale of 2. So when I select both cubes and press Ctrl A to apply the scale, watch what happens. The cube that already had a scale of 1 stays the same, but the one that had a scale of 2, it goes back to 1. And now the bevel looks just like the first cube. This is why we keep applying the scale again and again in this course, because modifiers like the bevel need the scale to be right to work correctly. So here's the deal. We can use the dimensions panel to model things based on real-world size, but always remember to apply the scale so it stays at 1. And look, after applying the scale, the dimensions still show the correct physical size of the object. This helps Blender display the real size properly. So if you try to work with real sizes as much as you can, it's gonna make your life way easier later. Especially when you get to lighting and camera work, because many light and camera properties in 3D software are based on real-world values, so we don't have to deal with crazy numbers. In this episode, we're going to use real-world sizes to build andysroom walls and the wooden floor, then bring in the assets we prepared in the last episode using the asset browser, and quickly model the door and window so the room is ready for lighting. As always, you can download the practice files using the link in the description. Okay, let's jump right in and get us started. Alright, let's quickly build the floor and walls of the room. If there is ever been a time where the default cube is actually useful in this course, it's right now. So let's use it. We don't want it to feel useless, right? Okay, I'll select the cube, press N, and in the dimensions panel, I'll set the height to 3 meters and both the length and width to 4.5 meters. Then I hit 1 on the numpad to go to front view, press G, then Z, and while holding Ctrl to snap, I'll move the cube up and place it right on top of the grid. Now I press Ctrl A and choose a scale to reset the scale to 1. Next, I press Tab to go into edit mode. I'll delete these two faces for now, just to make it easier to see inside the room and move our models around later. If you want to know exactly which faces I deleted, just keep an eye on the word navigation gizmo up here in the corner. Now, I'll turn on face orientation from this section here, and you'll see the normals are facing the wrong way. So let's fix that. In edit mode, I press A to select all faces, then Shift N for recalculate normals, and I'll turn on the inside checkbox down here. Okay, let me turn off face orientation again. Alright, now to give the walls some thickness, I'll add a solidify modifier, and in the thickness field, I type 15 cm. Yep, Blender understands that. See, it shows 0.15 meters, because Blender's default unit is in meters, but it still knows what we meant when we typed cm. Pretty smart. Alright, now let's rename this mesh to something clear, and for better visibility, I'll go to the viewport shading settings, turn on cavity, and set the type to both. Much better, okay? Next up, let's make the wooden floor. For now, I'll just select this and press H to hide it. I'll add a new cube, press N, and this time, I want to enter the real size of a single wood plank. I looked up the dimensions earlier, so now we'll just enter them in the dimensions panel. For thickness, 15 millimeters, width, 150 millimeters, and length, 1200 millimeters. And since the bottom face of this plank won't be visible, I'll go into edit mode, select it, and delete it. Back to object mode, press 1 on the numpad to go into front view, zoom in a bit, press G, then Z, and while holding Ctrl, I'll move it and place it on the grid. And finally, Ctrl A, apply scale. Alright, now before we start duplicating it, let's unwrap the UVs first so we won't have to redo anything later. I go to the side view, switch to edit mode, and activate edge select mode. Then I press Alt Z to turn on X-ray, and I select these 4 edges around the plank. I hit U and choose Mark Seam. Next I press A to select everything, press U again, unwrap, and go with angle based. Okay, if you check the UV editor now, you'll see it's unwrapped nicely. Cool. Now let's make a simple pattern for the floor. I press 7 on the numpad to go to top view, and I add a plane, and this is just a guide, and we'll delete it later. Okay, I move the wood plank over here. Okay, zoom in a bit, then press Shift D to duplicate it, and place the second one about here. Okay, I zoom in more. Press G and adjust it so the gap between them is really thin, just a small seam. Okay, now I select both, zoom in even more, press Shift D, then X to lock the movement to the X-axis, and move them here. Okay, then I zoom out. Now make sure not to move it again, and if the last thing you did was duplicate, you can simply press Shift R a few times to repeat the operation and make more copies like this. Nice. Now I'm gonna delete the plane because we don't need it anymore. Next, I select everything, press Shift D, move them down to start the next draw. Okay, zoom in, and adjust the gap again for accuracy. Perfect. I select them all and press Ctrl J to join them into one object. Okay, now I add a bevel modifier, change the segments to 3, and while holding Shift, adjust the amount value for the bevel. Okay. Switching to perspective view, and I press Alt-H to unhide the room mesh. Okay, now we need to cover the room's floor with this patch we just made. I go to top view, move it into position, and add an array modifier. Let's zoom in a bit. It looks good along the X-axis, so I just change the count to 3. Then I shift the whole thing a bit to the side. Even if it goes beyond the room edges, that's totally fine. So far, so good. Okay, now I hover over the array modifier and press Shift D to duplicate it. On the second array modifier, I set the factor X to 0 and change the factor Y instead. Let's go back to top view. And if I set Y to 1, you can see it goes in the wrong direction. So we need a negative value. Okay, I type -1 and zoom in. Now I hold Shift and fine-tune the factor Y value. Let me zoom in even more. Okay, for me, -0.858 works great. And finally, I adjust the entire floor just a bit so it sits roughly in the center of the room. Then I right-click and choose Shader Smooth to make the plank's shading softer. To fix the shading issue, I also add a weighted normal modifier. Lastly, I rename the object, and I also rename the collection. That's it. The floor for Andy's room is all set. Alright, now let's move on to modeling a skirting board. Let me hide this for now. Okay, to model the skirting, we need two types of curve objects. One as the path, and one as the profile for the skirting. For the path, I go into edit mode, select this face on the floor, press Shift D to duplicate it, then right-click to place it back exactly where it was. Then I press P and choose Selection to separate it from the main mesh. Now back in object mode, you'll see the face has been separated. I remove the Solidify modifier from it, then go into edit mode, and while the face is selected, I press X and choose only faces, so only the surrounding edges remain. Then I switch back to object mode, right-click on it, and choose Convert to Curve. Okay, I name it Path Skirting, and just like that, we've got our path ready. Now we can build the skirting profile and extrude it along this path. So first, I go to top view and hide the room object with H. Then I press Shift A, go to Image, and choose Reference. I pick the reference image for the profile, and you can download this image for free using the link in the description. Okay, next I go to the Filter menu and enable Selectable. Then make sure this option is turned off for the reference image, so we don't accidentally select it while modeling. Next, make sure that in Preferences and Get Extensions section, you've installed extra mesh objects. Now if I press Shift A and go to Mesh, you'll see we have some new options here. Okay, I go to Single Vert and click on Add Single Vert. It enters edit mode by default, so I press Tab to go back to object mode, press G, and move it over here. Okay. Then I press Tab again to go into edit mode. Make sure this vertex is selected, then press E to extrude, then X, and click here. And I keep extruding the vertices like this, tracing around the shape of the profile. Okay, no need to connect these two vertices at the back. It's the hidden face and won't be visible since it's placed against the wall. Then I select this vertex, press Ctrl B to bevel, then press V to make sure the bevel works on a vertex. Next, scroll to add more vertices in the middle, and if it doesn't let you move them far enough, just press C to disable clamp. Okay, I scroll to add a few more vertices, then click to confirm. Okay, now I select these two vertices, press O to turn on proportional editing, press G, and I scroll to adjust the size of the influence area, and then move the vertices to better match the reference. Okay, now you can see that some of the vertices are overlapping. So I press A to select all, then press M and choose by distance just to make sure there are no overlapping vertices left. Alright, then I select these two vertices, press S, then Y, type 0, and hit Enter. That flattens the edge between them. Now I just tweak the position of this vertex a bit to make it cleaner, and that's done. Okay, this one here is the data rail profile. I modded it really quickly using the same technique I just showed you, and I'll speed up the video a bit for this part. Alright, that's done too. We don't need the image reference anymore, so I'll delete it. Finally, I select both profiles, I move them off to the side, right-click, and convert them to curve objects. And name this one Profile Skirting, and the other one Profile Data Rail. Okay, so now we've got our path and profiles ready. Let's use them. I press Alt-H to unhide everything I had hidden earlier. Now I select this path, go to the Curve Data Properties, and under Geometry and Bevel, I enable Object, click the eyedropper, and pick this profile. Okay, as you can see, the profile is way too big, so we need to scale it down. But before we scale it, you need to be careful about the object origin. Its position is super important. For example, if I go into Edit mode, select all the points, and move the profile, you'll see the extrusion shifts because the profile is moving away from the object's origin. So I right-click to undo and bring the profile back. Now, if your object origin isn't in the right spot, just select this point, press Shift-S, and choose Cursor to Selected, then go back to Object mode, right-click, and choose Origin to 3D Cursor. Now the origin is in the correct spot. I'm going to do the same thing for the other profile too. Okay, that's done. And if you want to bring your 3D cursor back to the center, just press Shift-S again, and pick Cursor toward Origin. Alright, now in Object mode, I simply scale the profile down, and you can see it's updating correctly. That's done. Now I go to Front View, and move it up a bit so it sits properly on the floor. Okay, now to adjust its height more precisely, we can use a cube as a measuring tool. So I just add a cube and set its height to 0.2, then move it to sit on the floor. Okay, let's move it to this side. Alright, now we just need to scale the profile down until its height matches the cube. I select the profile skirting, go to Front View, press S, and scale it down. Okay, if I zoom in, you'll see its height is now exactly the same as the cube. Perfect. I won't delete the cube yet, we'll need it again in just a moment. Next, let's move on to the data rail profile. I make a duplicate of it and move it up, and name it Path Data Rail, then go to the Curve Properties, delete the previous profile by clicking the little X, and this time I select this profile for it. Now we just need to scale it down. We've already set the object origin earlier, so press S and scale it down a lot. Alright, let me move it a bit to the side, and I'll shift both of them slightly over here too. Okay, now let's set the height of this one from the floor and also adjust its own height. I go to Front View, zoom in a bit, I select the cube, press N, and set its height to 0.73. Then I place it right on top of the floor. Okay, so that's the height where the data rail should be placed above the floor. Next, I press Shift-D to duplicate the cube and move it up. Now this one will help us define the actual height of the data rail. I change its height to 0.07, then move it into position right above the first cube. Okay, then I move the data rail profile down. Now let's select the profile. I go back to Front View, zoom in again, press S, and scale it down to match the cube. That's done. We don't need these two cubes anymore, so I delete them. Done. Finally, I select both of these profile objects, press M, and move them into a new collection with a proper name. Then I hide the collection to keep things tidy. Okay, next, let's move on to the wooden panels in between. I add a cube, set its thickness to 4 mm and its width to 170 mm. Then I go to Front View, zoom in a little, and position it correctly in this view, snapping it against the wall surface. Okay, I turn on wireframe, zoom in closer, and fine-tune its placement. Alright, then I enable X-ray, go into edit mode, and move these top vertices downward. Okay, and bring the bottom ones up. Alright, and that's done. Next, I move it and place it in the corner of the wall, and I recommend unwrapping the UV right now. To save time, I won't show that step again, since we already covered it many times in the previous season of the course. Alright, I set the object origin to its center, and you can see that object scale needs to be applied, so I press Ctrl A and apply the scale. Then I add a bevel modifier, set the segments to 3, and while holding Shift, I adjust the amount. Next, I turn on Shade Smooth. After that, I add an array modifier, and we need to change the Y factor, so I set the X factor to 0. Let me adjust the viewport angle. Okay. Now, while holding Shift, I tweak the Y factor so there is a little gap between the pieces. Then, I increase the count until it fills the whole length of this wall. Finally, I add a weighted normal modifier so the shading looks right. Now we can press Shift-D to duplicate it and place it on all 4 sides of the wall. And that's it for the wall paneling. Okay, now before we move on to the door and window, let's bring in the assets one by one. To make things easier, I've added andysroom floor plan to the project file. It helps with layout and scaling of the objects. Just import the image and move it up a little so it sits on the floor and it's easier to see. Then, scale it up a bit so the walls in the image match the actual wall positions in your scene. Before I forget, as you can see, the wall thicknesses aren't equal right now. That's because when we added the solidify modifier, we forgot to enable the even thickness option. So, make sure you turn that on to get uniform wall thickness. After that, go to Top View, split the viewport in 2, and change this side to the Asset Browser. Then choose the andysroom Asset Library, and start dragging assets into the scene, and adjust their rotation and scale according to the floor plan. Okay, once all the assets are placed according to the plan, you'll notice that we still need to place them on the floor. Let me show you a super handy trick for that. We'll use the snap feature in Blender. Just click this icon to enable it, and then click on this. Okay, here we're not going to touch the other settings for now. Just make sure to set the snap base to center and the snap target to face. That's it. Now, if you select an object and press G, you'll notice it snaps to whatever surface the mouse hovers over. But since we don't want to move it on the X or Y axis, just press Z to lock it to the Z axis, then move your mouse slightly and click to snap it onto the surface below. It's that easy. So just select the object, press G, then Z, and move the mouse over the floor, and then click. Now, if I want to move this chair a bit to the side, it's better to turn off snapping first, so it doesn't get in the way. You can also toggle it quickly using Shift-Tab. That's it. So I'll go ahead and do this for each object, placing them neatly on the floor. For the table lamp, just hover the mouse over the nightstand and click. For the wall shelf, just hover over the wall, and it'll snap right onto it. Done. And finally, don't forget to turn off snapping again, so it doesn't interfere when moving objects around. Alright, now it's time to model the door and the window, which is actually a great opportunity to test yourself and see if you still remember the modeling techniques we covered back in Season 1. So, I won't be showing the full modeling process this time. I'll just walk you through the important tips and tricks that can help you along the way. I'm sure if you watched Season 1, you'll definitely be able to handle these two as well. But hey, if you run into any problems, don't worry at all. I've included both models in the practice file so you can check them out. And remember, you can also join our Discord group using the link in the description. It's completely free, and you can ask your questions there and get help from the new friends you'll make in the community. But be careful. Don't let that little voice in your head tempt you to skip the modeling and just use the pre-made objects from the file. Don't fall for it, okay? Alright, let's get started. Since the main scene was getting a bit crowded with all the models, I opened a new scene just for modeling. That way, once everything's ready, I can easily bring the models back into the main scene. I started with the window. I added a cube and set its height to 110 centimeters, width to 71 centimeters, and thickness to 10 millimeters. Then I applied the scale. In front view, I brought in the blueprint image I've also included in the practice file and scaled it down to match the size of the cube. Next, I added an edge loop to separate the top and bottom parts of the window, then pushed the top section slightly back. I added a few more edge loops selected the necessary faces, pressed Ctrl E, and chose Bridge Edge Loops to create the empty spaces for the glass panels. For the top section, I added another cube and in front view, scaled it along the x-axis. Then I scaled down the bottom vertices to shape it, and in side view, also scaled them along the y-axis to give it that trapezoid look from the side. Next, I added an edge loop in the middle, scaled it on x-axis to narrow it down, selected these two edge loops, beveled them, added more edge loops, and shaped it to match the reference. I also merged the overlapping vertices using merge vertices, beveled the sharp edges, and added a subdivision surface modifier to smooth the whole object. Done. Then for the rest of these parts, I just added a few more cubes with different dimensions and adjusted their thickness. For the bottom section, I simply duplicated all of the top pieces and placed them down below. I did the same for the top section of the door too. I duplicated those same objects, tweaked them, and positioned them based on the reference. Okay, for this part, I added another cube and scaled it along the z-axis to make it taller. Then I added two edges here and one more edge over here. After that, I deleted the back faces, added a mirror modifier, and activated only the y-axis. Next, I selected these faces, pressed Alt-E, chose Extrude Manifold, and pushed the faces slightly inward. Just like that. Super simple. Then, I deleted the top and bottom faces, selected these edges, and beveled them to give them a nice curved shape. After that, I added one more mirror modifier and used this object as the mirror axis. And that's it. Now it's time to model the Venetian blind curtain, which might look a bit tricky at first, but with the Archimesh add-on, it's actually way easier than you think. First, go to Preferences, head over to Get Extensions tab, search for Archimesh, and install it. Then, if you hit N, you'll see a new tab called Create has been added. As you can see, with just one click, you can add various architectural objects like doors, stairs, shelves, and more. Here, we just need to click on Venetian blind, and boom, it's instantly added to the scene. Now, just select it and place it in the right position. You can then adjust its properties from this panel. For example, I'll adjust the width from here, and look how cool this is already looking. What's even cooler is that you can tweak the properties anytime you want. So in a way, this model stays non-destructive. For instance, here I'll adjust the height to match the height of our window, and you can also change the size of these slats from here, though the default size works well for now. And here's the fun part. You can change the angle to open or close the slats. And with Extend, you can rise or lower them too. Pretty quick and awesome. Finally, you can switch to Material Preview, choose an HDRI image of your choice, rotate it a bit, and just admire what you've built. Okay, now, as you can see, these objects are all separate. So if you want to move them around, you'd have to select all of them every time, which can get really tedious. There are several ways to move multi-part models even when they're not collection assets. Let me show you one common method. Press Shift-A, go to Empty section, and choose Cube as your empty. Now, empties don't really do anything on their own. They're just helpful control tools, and by default, they don't show up in the render. You'll also notice they have their own icon in the outliner. Alright, now let's go to the front view and change its scale like this. Then in the side view, I'll scale it a bit more like this. Okay, there we go. Now if I press Ctrl A and apply the scale, you'll see the empty snaps back to its original cube shape. That's why instead of using regular scale, we should choose scale to deltas. And just like that, the scale resets to 1, but the shape stays exactly as we made it. Perfect. Now we can easily link the window to this empty, so we only need to move the empty to move the whole model, instead of selecting all objects each time. But here's an important point. This object is actually the parent object. So whenever you want to change its properties, you need to make sure you select this parent object specifically. That's the only way you'll have access to those properties. That's also why it's important to not break the connection between this object and its child objects. Otherwise, you'll lose the non-destructive functionality. So first, select all the window objects except the curtain-related ones. Then select the empty and press Ctrl P and choose the second option, Object Keep Transform. Now, when I move the empty, all the window objects except the curtain move along with it. Next, just select this object, that's the parent of curtain pieces, then select the empty again, press Ctrl P, and once again choose the second option. And now when I move the empty, everything, the whole window and the curtain, moves together. And the cool part is, if you select this object, you still have access to its properties and can change them whenever you want. Nice and clean. Finally, I'll press A to select everything, create a new collection for them, and name it Window. You can also assign a custom color to the collection if you like. That's it. Let's turn this collection off for now and quickly go over a few tips on door modeling so we can finish up these last two models. Door modeling definitely shouldn't be hard anymore at this point. For the size, let's go with 85 centimeters wide, 10 centimeters thick, and 210 centimeters tall. Once you've added the edge loops based on the reference, you can select these faces and press I to inset them like this. Now we need to scale these faces in the Z direction, but based on their own centers. If you just press S and then Z, it doesn't work the way we want. To fix that, simply go to the transform pivot point up here and set it to individual origins. Now if you press S and then Z, you see that everything scales perfectly just how we want. When you're done, don't forget to switch the pivot point back to median point, the default. Otherwise, it might cause unexpected results while you work. Okay, then just select these faces and extrude them slightly inward. And the rest, well, you already know the drill. Alright, here's another little tricky part, making the hole for the key on this object. For this, you can create a simple shape like this, place it where the keyhole should go, and then use a really cool feature to project it onto the object. Let me show you how. First, select this object, then press 1 to go to the front view, and switch to Edit mode. Now, in the outliner, select the shape you made, and then from the Mesh menu, just click on Knife Project. And just like that, you see the shape gets projected onto the object. Now, while it's still selected, press E to extrude it inward. After that, you can delete the shape. But now, as you can see, the shading around the hole looks really bad because the topology around it isn't clean. To fix that, just right-click and choose Shade Auto Smooth. And boom, the shading looks way better now. Keep in mind though, if you try to select the edges around the hole, you'll find it kind of difficult due to the messy topology. And if you try to bevel the edges, it won't give you a nice result either. This method works great when your object won't be seen up close, but if it is going to be viewed from close range, you'll need to manually clean up the topology around the hole so that beveling works properly. And that's a whole other topic, more like advanced 3D modeling, which we won't go into in this course. So for now, let's keep it simple, because this method gets the job done. Alright, that's it. The rest of the door modeling is pretty straightforward, so I'll leave it up to you. After modeling, just like we did for the window, create a cube empty object, then join all three hinges together. Next, select the entire model and parent it to the empty. Also, don't forget to parent the door and the handle objects to the hinges. That way, when you move the empty, the whole model moves with it, and anytime you want, you can just rotate the hinge on the Z-axis to open or close the door. Finally, don't forget to create a collection for it and give it a proper name. And that's it for the window and door models. Now let's bring them into our main scene, place them where they belong, and wrap up this episode. Alright, if you have this SmartFollow add-on, things get a lot easier. Just press A to select all objects, then Ctrl-Shift-C to copy them, and Ctrl-Shift-V to paste them into the main scene. That way, all your models will be added with their collection still organized. I've dropped the link to the add-on in the description for you. But if you don't have this add-on, you'll need to bring in each object manually. Select each object one by one, press Ctrl-C, and then Ctrl-V in the main scene. Now, when you do this, the objects collection gets lost. So right after pasting, while the object is still selected, press M, create a new collection, and give it a proper name. Cool. Now let's go ahead and place the objects in the scene. I'll start by selecting the door object. Then, I'll activate snapping using the same setting we talked about before. Snap base set to center, and snap target set to face. Now I press G, and place the door roughly where it should go. Then I press Shift-Tab to turn snapping off, and rotate the door -90 degrees. I move it a little to the side, and in side view, I place it on the floor, adjusting the position a bit more. Okay, nice. But now, if I select the hinge and rotate it to open the door, you'll notice, the back of the door is blocked. We need to clear that out. To do that, we'll delete the parts of the geometry that are sitting behind the door. Let's say I select this object, and if you look at the outliner, you'll see it's still a curve object. So I right-click and go to Convert to and Mesh. I do the same thing for this one too, okay? And for this other object, I move my mouse over the Array modifier, press Ctrl-A and apply it. Now I go into Edit mode, press Ctrl-R and add an edge loop here and another one this side. Next, I select these vertices, press X and delete them. I repeat the same thing for the other two remaining objects. Next, add an edge loop here one here, and one more here. Then I select this face and delete it. And just like that, you can see we've cleared out the backside, and now we can easily open the door anytime you want. Alright, now let's close up the part of the wall we had left open earlier. I'll alt-click here to select this edge loop, then press F to fill the gap. Alright, we can pretty much say our work for this episode is done. But from here on out, I've got a couple challenges for you. Let's see if you're ready to stand on your own feet and how willing you are to face your fear and keep going without watching the rest of the video. But don't worry at all, I'm sure you can do it. You're here to learn how to solve things on your own, not just follow everything step by step. So give it your best shot. And if it doesn't work out, that's totally okay. It's all part of the process. And remember, our Discord group is here to help. You can share your issue there and get help from your friends or even from me. Okay. The first challenge is about the second door. Its hinges and doorknob need to be on the opposite side compared to the first one. Think simply. How would you go about doing that? I recommend duplicating the door in the scene where we modeled the door and window, creating this version of the door there, and then bringing it into the main scene, place it roughly around this area, and like before, clear the back part using the same method we already used. Okay, the next challenge. This one is so simple. I don't even want to call it a challenge. It's just about placing the windows and clearing the wall behind them. Place the windows on this side of the wall, and for some variation, raise the curtain of this window a bit, and maybe open the window a little too. The third window should go on this wall, above Andy's desk, and it just needs to be a bit smaller than the other two. Finally, select the room object, press the / on your numpad to go into local view, and if your floor looks weird like mine did, just delete the bottom face and you're good to go. Alright everyone. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for sticking with me all the way to the end of the video. If you've been enjoying the content and it's been helpful to you and you're in a position to do so, I'd really appreciate your support on Patreon. The link is in the description. Even a little support goes a long way for us. And if you're not able to support financially, no worries at all. Leaving a comment, a like, or even sharing the video means a lot too. See you in the next episode. Thanks to all the amazing people who supported us this month. A special shout out to Eric Retania for supporting us on Patreon, and to everyone who baked the BlenderTutorial course during the past seasons on Gumroad and ArtStation. If you'd like to support what we're doing, you can join us at patreon.com/MiM-Repository. All supporters get a mention at the end of each video, and you receive a full month of shoutouts starting from the moment you join, even if it's at the very end of the month. Thanks again for watching, and see you soon.